faith and people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, GLBT+. We've got 3 panelists who are with it, and I will introduce them in the order in which they're going to speak. Rich Jacobs is known by all of you as he's a member of this church and on the Elgin Human Relations Commission. AJ Draper is a new person to the Elgin community. She is a staff person for Youth Outlook, which is a social service agency that runs a drop-in center for youth who are gay or lesbian, and they are housed at the YWCA across the street. And David Pattee is a UCZ minister, member of the Coalition for Open and Confirming Churches, and will be speaking to us from the perspective of the church. I've asked them to address 3 questions. What's the problem? What's your organization doing about the problem? And what do you want us to do about the problem? And with that in mind, we'll give them 8 minutes or so, and then we'll turn it over for questions and conversations amongst us. Rich?
Okay.
Use the microphone.
I have to.
You have to.
Yes.
All right. Since you're my church family, I'm just going to say this. I was at my John and Sandy's granddaughter, John's niece's wedding. So please forgive me, because it was a very late night at Danny's. The second thing is my phone is updating as we speak at my house. So I don't have my phone, so I'm very anxious at this moment, where I have all my notes for this. So thankfully, I have 2 very good friends sitting at that table back there. Denise Haben, who is the Director of Resource Development for Open Door Clinic, and many of you know Eric Anderson. And so I might be relying on them for some dates and for some other information that would normally be on my phone. The first question was, so what is the issue? Is that right? What's the problem? So it's the same problem that it is with almost, I believe, in my opinion, any other group of individuals. It's fighting to be treated fairly and to be accepted as who we are and to be in a safe and enriching community where we can thrive and give back to the community. And then within the LGBTQ, and I am not a spokesman for the LGBTQ, I'm a spokesman for myself and what I have gone through. And I can say a little bit about what my husband and I have gone through. We're 2 white men, and so we have different experiences than those that are minorities within the LGBTQ community. In unfortunately all aspects of our society, white men have it better, or it's perceived to be better, which is unfortunate. But it's vastly different for an Hispanic gay person or an African American or transgender, and I cannot speak on that behalf at all. I just know it's different, and they have the other issues that minority has to deal with on top of everything else. I strive to find a community where it is open and accepting and I can thrive and give back. And I never thought I would say this before we moved to Elgin, because I never thought Elgin was it at all. I knew Elgin only through Danny's Pizza when it was located on the west side of town, when John and I first got together 28 years ago. And we were living in Lincoln Park, and I only visited and only knew Elgin from that little shopping center, and I did not want to move here. But anyway, the moment we moved here 19 years ago, this has been the greatest move for us. We found a community, we found a place, and we are thrilled to be here. Is it perfect? No. Are we striving to make it perfect? Yes. And I think there are enough folks out here who are like-minded, who are trying to do the same thing. So that's my answer to the first question. I've only had 1 cup of coffee too, so please forgive me. What is the Elgin Human Relations Commission doing about it? I've been a member 6 years now, possibly. One of the events, one of our missions that, it's not a mission, one of the things that we do is we try to partner and sponsor diverse events happening in the city of Elgin. And an event that's coming up on March 31st, and I will refer to Denise Haven on specific information if you have questions on this, is Trans Day of Visibility, where the Human Relations Commission is a sponsor and will help get the word out, and is also a financial sponsor for that event. So we entertain groups who deal with the LGBTQ community, and we try to promote it. We're also working on a diversity plan with the city, which has been an ongoing effort. This is in regards to diversifying the workforce of the city of Elgin government. Not necessarily, this document isn't about the city as a whole. There's a warrior, again, I'm referring to Denise, who's been fighting this for a very long time and can speak longer about it than I can. We are keeping at it, and we're trying to continue to work with the city on this issue, which does include LGBTQ issues and addressing and supporting staff members. And a new thing that we have just been approached with by the city, by a citizen who's also now a new member of our church. Eric Anderson is, and he can speak far better on this than I can, but the Municipal Equity Index, which is trying to get the city of Elgin to basically do an audit and find ways to be more inclusive. Cook County is a part of this index, am I correct? And so for those of you who live in the city of Elgin in Cook County, can rest assured that the Cook County government has gone through that process. We are at the very beginning, and if history tells itself, this is going to be a long haul based on the diversity plan that we have been working on. Third question?
What do you want the church to do?
I would, first of all, I'm very pleased all of you are here. And this is, again, my personal opinion about this. I grew up in this church, not this particular church, but the United Church of Christ. This is in Ohio, so I've been a part of this church family for a very long time. For me, I'm not drawn to the church because it has this official designation of being open and accepting. I just need to know the folks that go here are open and accepting. I'm not against trying to get that designation. There are others that can speak better than I on that process and the history that goes into it. But, I can't speak on why people join a church regardless of if they're LGBTQ or not. I know I invite folks in various ways to come to our church if I find that they need or are searching for a home, because we're talking about it, and I have been able to bring a number of folks to come to the church to try it out, and many have joined. But having these conversations, I believe it's a part of our new ministries to have LGBTQ a part of it. The fact that we're even saying the word and talking about it openly is a big deal. And that and asking all of the church members to talk about this, that we have these programs, And it's through dialogue like that, I believe, where we may get new members. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me. I am AJ Draper, and I work for Youth Outlook and also for the YWCA across the street. So Youth Outlook was started in 1996. Some community members in Naperville, including our CEO, Nancy Mullen, had just gotten together casually, and they were all talking about how LGBTQ youth and their families didn't have any place to go. So from that simple statement sparked an idea to open a drop-in center. The very first one was in Naperville, and since then we have spread to many western suburbs, and finally here to Elgin. We are opening our first drop-in center on March 4th. It'll be at the YWCA right across the street, so we are very excited about that. And what this provides is a safe space for LGBTQ youth, whether they're questioning their identity, whether they absolutely know who they are. They need a safe space to go where they can just be themselves and be around their peers. So we're very excited to be able to do that here in Elgin, being as though it is a huge community with a ton of students. So that itself is the problem, but as you can tell, the problem has a solution. We're also getting a lot of requests from other cities around the northwest suburbs to open drop-in centers. The next one that will be opening in the fall of this year will be in Elmhurst. And that's just the tip of the iceberg over the last 2 years. We've had so many requests that we can't keep up. So that answers what the problem is and what we're doing about it. What you can do about it, you can volunteer. If you know anybody that wants to volunteer to come work with us in the drop-in center, whether it be in Elgin or one of the other communities, spread the word. If you yourself want to volunteer, I have information I will leave here with you guys. Another way you can help is you can't tell how somebody identifies just by looking at them. A simple solution I like to suggest, and it's even a work in progress for me, and I'm 41. So when you introduce yourself, you can say, for example, my name is AJ, and I use the pronouns they and them. Or you can say she and her, he and his. It's just a simple way to be an ally to the community. And it's something that takes practice. I have to practice it every day myself. Another way you can help is if you have resources you'd like to donate. We'll take any kind of resources. We do arts and crafts, we do snacks, and we're relying on the community around us to help get those items, as we're mainly grant funded. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them after we are done here, and I thank you all for being here today and listening to my little speech.
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
So you said the drop-in center March 4th, is it?
March 4th, it'll be a Monday, yes.
And what time, and is it then weekly or monthly, or?
Great question.
Spread the word.
Yes, we are gonna start doing it every other week on Monday nights. It'll run from 6:30 to 9.
Okay.
And we're hoping, and I'm actually anticipating that not too soon after that we'll be running it every Monday night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Pattee. I use he and him. It's a good way to kind of clue people in and give them the freedom to say back to you how they want to be called. I'm a pastor and teacher of the United Church of Christ and a member of the F.C.C. coalition that has been known by various names through the years since the 4th year of existence, which is longer ago than I'm going to confess. Michael, I think it was a slip. He said in introducing me that I would represent the church's view on open and affirming. And I would just like to point out that barely 1/3 of the congregations in the United Church of Christ are open and affirming. The General Synod, conferences, various instrumentalities, and a lot of congregations have owned the open and affirming witness, but it's only about 1/3 of the UCC congregations. Being a preacher, I thought that the best way that I could address all three questions is with two quick anecdotes and allow you folks to kind of get on the inside of them, and then maybe we'll ask some questions, have some conversation after worship even. The first thing that I'd like to say is that it is often, I would say generally, easier for me to explain to my Christian friends that I am gay than it is for me to explain to my gay friends that I am a Christian. The prevailing voice in culture, the prevailing voice of Christianity is certainly not open and affirming. And there may be any number of reasons for that. But I think part of it kind of falls on us. Our energy, our commitment, our reticence. The next story that I want to tell is when I was a few years ago called as senior pastor of the United Church of Christ in Kent, Ohio, the church pretty much at the center of Kent State University that functions as the de facto Protestant university chapel. A vibrant and dynamic community that was a lot of fun. And they were not open and affirming when they called me. They had been advised by an interim pastor that being open and affirming or continuing this process during the interim period would limit their prospects. So they ended up with me. After I arrived, it came up again. I think in some part as a response to my being there, but I didn't initiate it. I was not leading the charge. Of course, as it came up again, I did for the congregation, as I understand that Michael is doing for you, to help to organize a process, to bring in resources, to facilitate that conversation, all that sort of thing. And the coalition does have a whole curriculum of materials, a recommended process, resources for congregations having this conversation. A lifelong member of the congregation, name of Paul, a lovely, generous, gospel-hearted man, who was very supportive of me and very involved in the congregation, and I think, all for the inclusivity and what you might refer to as the family dynamic of the congregation, including queer folks. He came into my office one day. He made an appointment, and he came in with some concern. And he said, there were some people who were honked off when we called you. And there are other people who are honked off by the mere fact that we're having this conversation, much less any result that might come from it, our standing in the community, what's going to appear in the media, et cetera, et cetera. He said, I'm just wondering, how much more open and affirming do we need to be? After all, we called you. It was in all the newspapers. It was on the Akron TV, et cetera, et cetera. And I wasn't quite prepared for that question. And I stopped for a moment, which saved me from saying the smart-ass thing that was on my mind. And I just said, Paul, at what point in the new member process, from now until doomsday, do you suppose that I should feel personally obligated to discuss my sexuality with all the incoming members, to make sure they were reading the newspapers that week or listening to the TV? It's not about me or a person or who we are at the moment. It's about us. And it's not really even about our welcome. It's about our witness, who we believe God to be, how we see that in the good news of Jesus Christ by his teaching and life and death and resurrection. Who would he want to welcome to the table? How do we understand that kind of extravagant, overflowing love? And how are we going to live that out in the community? Altering our shape to be open and reaching out to people who don't know that we are and that God is for them. What are we going to do about that? That's really what we believe this is about. Making a decision about what we believe, who we trust, and how we're going to live that. And not just for queer folks, not just for LGBT folks, but for all the people who seek to know God's love and think maybe there might be somebody who's got something to share with them in that. So, as a longtime member of the coalition, who by no means represents the church, that's what we want you to do. We want you to decide about what your faith is and what your witness will be and how you want to grow. It's not just about who you are now, as welcoming as that might be. It is about who you believe yourselves called to become in Christ Jesus. Questions?
Questions for any of our panelists? Yes.
I have a question for AJ.
Yeah.
When my daughter was growing up, she's in the theater, and it was many years ago. And the theater with young people sometimes attracts gay folks to participate. And what I learned about that at that time was how non-accepting parents of these children were, because they ended up at my house. And a lot of times, just the situation was so bad that some of them had to actually leave home because their parents were so non-approving of their sexuality. Has that changed in a generation?
That is a great question. Has it changed? Yes. Is the fight over? No. I mean, as a teenager today, we don't know what they're experiencing at home. So that's like another thing that Youth Outlook provides. They may not have a safe space at home. They may not have a safe space at school, where they may not feel safe to be who they are. On the flip side, part of what Youth Outlook also provides, and I forgot to mention this because this is early morning for me and I'm not a trained speaker, but we do have parent support groups. It is not something that we have started in Elgin yet, but I can probably confidently say that it will be coming once we get the program started. So Naperville has one, and let's say the parents drop off their kids for group. Then the group of parents meet upstairs with another Youth Outlook staff member. They actually just started a parent group in Palatine as well, and that one is actually run by a licensed social worker. So the way that came about is probably similar to your experience. Like a couple of the parents found themselves hanging out in the parking lot waiting for their kids to be at the drop-in center. So they found their own community where they could gather and discuss the way that they were feeling. So hopefully that answers your question. So yes, things have changed. Are they done changing? No, I think there's always more.
If these kids come to you and they're really having problems at home, do you have like alternative places where these kids can go to get help in dealing with their situation?
Absolutely. Like most of our volunteers and me as a site leader, we're not trained counselors, although some of what we do is basically counseling, listening. We do provide resources. So if a teen, preteen were to come with us with concerns, we would direct them to other resources in the community, whether it be counseling, basically whatever they need, we're gonna find them a resource. And the byproduct of that with Youth Outlook didn't start out as an organization that was aimed to do suicide prevention, but that has been a huge outcome for them.
I have a question about parenting programs. Are the social workers trained in cultural awareness? Because being in a Hispanic community is seen as a very negative thing in some families of being gay. So dealing with kids that are, ashamed to tell their parents, I'm not sure if they're culturally aware of what's going on.
That is a great question that I don't have a solid answer to. I would have to, I've only met one of the social workers once for the one that started in Palatine. I'd like to say that they are. I've done some graduate level classes in counseling, not degreed, but maybe in the future. And cultural competency is a big part of graduate programs. So
Just to keep going with it because it's very important.
yes, but I will definitely, I can get an answer for you. I'll give you my contact information, and I'll also check in to make sure that that's
And I'm a
something.
teacher, so that's like important to me to have my parents understand what my kids are going through.
Absolutely, I'm a teacher at the YWCA and I have the kindergarten kids, so it starts there.
Yeah.
Do you live here in Elgin?
I live in Schaumburg, but I've worked in Elgin for 4 years and my family lives in Elgin. I grew up in Huntley, which is quite small compared to Elgin, but yeah, so I'm here basically every day during the week.
We need you here in church.
That sounds like an invitation.
Well done.
That was smooth, that was smooth.
Yeah, so to the woman who is asking about cultural competency, let me give you, I work with Open Door Health Center.
I would love to get.
Okay, so we can talk after.
Yes, and Open Door has been a great partner for us as well with Youth Outlook, so thank you. Any more questions for me? Yes.
Yeah, could you give at least me a better understanding of what volunteers do at the drop-in center? I mean, volunteerism covers a broad range. I mean, I can think of some things I would not want to do as a volunteer, and I can think of things that I would love to do as a volunteer.
Absolutely, and we take that into consideration as far as what you're comfortable with. So, as volunteers, we're basically in charge of facilitating the group. So, group dynamics, you want to keep everything flowing. We'll have a weekly topic, which we want to get input from the kids. So eventually the goal is to have it actually pretty much be run by them, where you're just there as a supportive person. We do arts and crafts, which isn't my thing, but maybe somebody that's volunteering with me loves to do that. I'm into sports. Maybe we'll do something sports related. So it really depends on your comfort, and I think the site leaders are going to take that into consideration. We'd never make you do something you're not comfortable with. And the volunteers actually go through a training where we give you a ton more information about the LGBTQ community, the process of what we do in the drop-in centers, the check-in process. You name it, we cover it. What happens if somebody is going through something really tough, such as you think they're suicidal, everything like that. So the volunteers arrive at 6 o'clock, which is a half an hour before the kids. So we'll prep the room, we'll have snacks, what teens don't like to eat. And then we stay about a half an hour after the kids leave and finish the paperwork that we got to keep track of for grant purposes. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Somebody else for him?
Sir, please, procedurally, what would a church have to do to go through to become opening and affirming?
There is a process that's recommended, that's available on the Coalition website and can be linked through the F.C.C website. I'm sure Michael has it. There are a number of different ways that a congregation can own the open and affirming covenant now, and it can be done by vote of the church council. I will say, out of my own perspective, I think that's a bad idea. I think it really needs to be a congregational ownership and a ground up thing, and not another sort of semi-closeted move by the church council, because that sort of defeats the whole purpose. So in my experience, dealing with this directly and from what I know, it involves a process, discussion, a hearing in congregational meeting, and at the time appropriate, a vote of the congregational meeting. I just want to add, though, something for you to think about in the future. However you go with this, there's a huge difference, a huge distance from open to affirming. And I think more than the declaration is required, more than the owning of the covenant is required. It really calls for a living of the covenant, doing some things differently, opening the circle, running up the flag, reaching out, programming, making safe space available to organizations that may be looking for it and needing it, getting involved, having this be an ongoing part of the congregational conversation. The covenant really should be thought of as a beginning of a ministry.
Go ahead. I got a question for Rich. What's the outlook in Springfield on Anna Moeller's bill that was introduced this week?
Her curriculum bill?
Yes.
Is probably going to pass. We have a very supportive governor, and with majorities in both the House and the Senate, it's likely to pass.
Unfunded though?
Unfortunately. It's Springfield. You can't expect too much change all at once.
I have a question for Rich. When you moved to Elgin, you said it was different, that quite what you were expecting. What forces have been at work here? Why is Elgin different than what you were expecting? What's been going on here?
Well, honestly, many of you know where we live. It was the our neighbors, and our particular neighborhood. I can't speak on different areas in Elgin, but we live in the Spring Douglas Historic District, and we're on Douglas, and John and I owned a coach house in Lincoln Park, and I came kicking and screaming 3 years before I agreed to move out here, because I moved from Ohio to live in Chicago, not Elgin. And I said to him, it was the house that did it for me, that finally I'm like, okay, I can see living here, but one neighbor says one thing about a gay couple, I'm out of here. And literally we move in, and many of you know the Steffens and the Foxes, Dan and Karen Fox. I mean, literally wine and muffins and baskets of stuff, and it's been pretty great ever since. I was able to, my background is in nonprofit management. I worked for a number of national nonprofits, but based in Chicago. I hated the commute. I was able to find a job here in Elgin, and now I work in government for a state senator. If it wasn't for this community, my husband would not be a judge. I mean, everything, and I can't explain it other than it was the people, and there seem to be other folks moving out here who are not necessarily old timers, and this is a whole separate discussion, but there are some folks that are stuck who are not like-minded politically, it's not the way it used to be in Elgin and everything's bad, and basically because of the diversity, which I think is not just ethnic diversity, it's, there are a lot of gay folks that live in the Elgin area. I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
What should we have asked you that we haven't?
AJ,
Yeah.
how are you getting the word out to the youth in the community?
Great question. And actually, I and Randy, who is the youth services manager for Youth Outlook, and I think another Youth Outlook site leader, we are meeting with all of the U46 social workers on Tuesday. So,
And they've been trained, like continuous training.
yes. So hopefully that's the spark. Other than that, we've been using social media, Facebook, Instagram. I know the Y is gonna cross-post a lot for me. It's a benefit of me working there. I can push them to do that.
So is Youth
word of
Outlook
mouth.
a Y program, or is it's just using?
It's its own nonprofit. Randy, actually, she started working for Youth Outlook within the past year. She came to us at the Y before she was even involved on staff at Youth Outlook with the idea of opening a drop-in center in Elgin. She had lived in Elgin at the time and saw the need, and rightly so. And all the pieces have fit together. She came to the right place. Our CEO, Julia, has been very giving and giving us space to do that, and as well as the YWCA is very diverse, not just in ethnicity, but obviously in identity as well. So it was about timing, and everything worked out for the good.
I have a question for you. Bridge, what I'm wondering is, how can we get the word out? You inviting people is a wonderful thing, but is there more that we can do besides our benches out front? And the second thing is, do you know why couples who have recently come have already moved on?
Well, I don't know those answers. I would need to know specifics of who those folks might be. But this is my personal opinion. I don't think there needs to be a quota. I don't think we have to go and say, we have to have X amount of LGBTQ people and we have to work towards that. It needs to be organic. It needs to be, I do my small little part, and everyone can do the same thing. You can also ask your friends and people that you come into contact with who talk about needing to find a church home and offering to come here to try it out. Because that's all I've done. And there, it's been, again, I haven't written it down. It's been equal, maybe, not all of them have been gay LGBTQ folks. That's not the point for what I'm doing. But I think we need to stop. My opinion is, it's not about how many. We should just go, make sure we constantly think of being open and accepting, not just for the LGBTQ community, but for all ethnicities, for all minorities, for people, yes. And they will come. And, and when the year is up and we look at new members and, if we were writing grants, we would have to put, ethnicities and all this other stuff. And, if we haven't hit a certain number, that's okay, so long as we all feel good about what we're trying to do, and we're doing it fulfilling the church's mission, which we believe in. That is just as important, because it's through that and through your conversations with your friends and family that help, and people will come.
Can I take a stab at that?
Yeah.
In my experience, where most congregations find they have a real bump through the open and affirming process is not first or even predominantly with GLBT folks. It's with younger married people with children who want their families to have a certain norm about what community is and have a certain outlook on the gospel. And that's where you're likely to see the first surge of growth. Second, I would point you to the Gospels. And not too much of Jesus' ministry occurs in the synagogue. It's in people's homes, it's at people's workplaces, it's out where they are. Building, if you will, social capital. So a lot of the concentration, I think, in the ONA ministry is not so much waiting for people to come here as it is going into settings where you can make friendships and alliances of trust that overcome the historic and predominant messaging of Christianity and culture, and extend the invitation that way, and have people, maybe before you invite them to church, invite them to your home.
David, this question is for you as well. I have long felt that the open and affirming statement, because it just focused on LGBTQ, was limiting. And in fact, I thought it should be an open and affirming statement that we are welcoming of those with differing abilities, whatever.
When was the last time you looked at the recommended statement?
It's maybe been a while.
It's been at least 10 years.
Okay, but I think the problem is that word is not out there.
Yeah, well,
And it's always associated with the...
Sure, everyone that I have ever been a part of has been much broader than just queer folks. Out of the realization that this is not just about sexuality, right? It's about a basic approach to the gospel and our witness and ministry. You are quite free to tailor whatever statement you make to the understanding and the call of your congregation. That statement has to include gay people, but it certainly doesn't need to be limited to gay people. And in fact, the recommended covenant for quite some time now, that would be available again on the Coalition website and linked through UCC website, is much broader than just queer folks.
Good.
Are there any other questions for our panelists? I wanted to thank everybody for coming, panelists and congregants alike. So how about a round of applause?
Thank you.